Queen Liz welcomes you to Homegirl with a Hand Grenade, the story of Sonia Sanchez, a video exploring the poetic architecture, activism, and enduring voice of Sonia Sanchez. Sonia Sanchez's career spans decades, marked by four major periods, from the light of morning in the 1930s to the eternal breath of the present. Her life is a roar of a new day, influenced by various cultural and social movements. As Sonia Sanchez reminds us, the most important thing to do is listen. In a world ready to tell what it knows, she encourages a love affair with listening. Sonia Sanchez, a prominent poet, activist, and leader within the Black arts movement. Through academic essays and personal interviews, the texts explore how poetry serves as a vital tool for social change, allowing marginalized communities to assert their humanity and reclaim their cultural heritage. Sanchez describes her transition from a shy child who stuttered to a revolutionary voice who uses authentic language and symbols to challenge systemic racism. One scholarly analysis specifically highlights her poem, "This Is Not a Small Voice," illustrating how it celebrates collective identity and resilience while countering negative stereotypes. Ultimately, the materials present Sanchez as a literary lion whose work bridges the gap between artistic expression and political resistance. The life of Sonia Sanchez began in a crucible of silence. Born Sonia Benita Driver in Birmingham, Alabama, in 1934, she lost her mother during childbirth just a year later. By age 6, the grandmother who raised her, her beloved mama, also passed away. The weight of this double grief manifested as a severe, agonizing stutter. For years, Sonia retreated into the world of books and observation, later realizing this period was her protection. It forced her to hear the internal music of words and the nuances of sound before she ever dared to speak them aloud. In this forced quiet, she became a, quote, professional listener. While other children played, she studied the jagged breathing of the grieving and the melodic cadence of Southern porch talk. When she moved to Harlem at age 9 to reunite with her father, the stutter remained a barrier between her and the vibrant, noisy streets. However, the move introduced her to the public library, which became her sanctuary. She began to write poems in secret, realizing that on paper, her voice never tripped or faltered. The rhythmic tapping of her pen became her first percussion. This private dialogue with the page taught her that language was not just for communication, but for survival. By the time she reached Hunter College, she had transformed her stutter from a source of shame into a rhythmic blueprint, eventually using those very hesitations to create the syncopated, jazz-infused style that would define the Black arts movement. In 1943, she moved to Harlem to live with her father, a jazz musician whose lifestyle introduced her to the basement clubs and late-night jam sessions of a neighborhood in transition. This move was a sonic awakening. The air in Harlem was thick, with the syncopation of bebop and the urgent political chatter of post-war America. While she excelled at Hunter College and studied the precision of verse under the formalist poet Louise Bogan, the real curriculum was the pulse of the Black arts movement. Bogan taught her the how of poetry, but Harlem taught her the why. Influenced by the radical clarity of Malcolm X, whom she often heard speaking on street corners, Sonia began to unwhite her mind. She rejected the European standards of literature that ignored her heritage, instead embracing a raw, urban aesthetic. She joined a collective of young, defiant creators who believed that art should be a weapon for social change. As a central figure of the movement, she began to experiment with Black English, using slashes, elongated vowels, and rhythmic repetitions to mirror the energy of the people. She used her poetry to demand liberation and celebrate Black identity with a voice that was no longer a stutter, but a rhythmic, powerful roar. This transformation proved that her early silence was merely the gathering of breath for a lifelong shout against injustice. The Jazz Pulse, Poetry in Blue. The life of Sonia Sanchez was scored by the syncopated rhythms of the mid-century Harlem jazz scene. Because her father, Wilson Driver, was a noted jazz musician and schoolteacher, the house was a revolving door for the era's sonic pioneers. She grew up with the sounds of the bass and the saxophone vibrating through the floorboards, a musical curriculum that taught her how to hold a beat and when to improvise long before she began writing formally. Sonia did not just write poems, she composed them with the timing of a percussionist and the soul of a horn player. She treated her voice as an additional instrument in the ensemble, often performing alongside jazz greats like Max Roach and Sun Ra. In her work, she pioneered the use of vocal slurs and chanting to mimic the improvisational nature of a jazz solo. She famously wrote 10 haikus for Max Roach to honor the legendary drummer's passing, using the brevity of the form to capture the staccato energy of his drumming. For Sonia, jazz was more than entertainment. It was the classical music of Black survival and resistance. She used her poetry to bridge the gap between the music and the movement, ensuring that the struggle for liberation was always set to a rhythmic, unbreakable pulse. She frequently shared stages and recordings with jazz icons like Max Roach and Sun Ra, treating her own voice as an additional instrument in the ensemble. In her performances, she didn't just read words, she breathed them, growled them, and sang them, creating a sonic landscape that mirrored the complexity of the African-American experience. In seminal works like Homecoming and We Are Bad People, she utilized Black English and radical, unconventional typography, slashes, multiple letters, and fragmented spacing to mimic the improvisational nature of a saxophone solo or the industrial screech of an urban landscape. To Sonia, jazz was the classical music of Black survival. She understood that just as a musician bends a note to reach an emotion beyond the staff, a poet could bend a vowel to reach a truth beyond standard English. She famously integrated chanting, rhythmic groans, and vocal slurs into her readings, effectively transforming a standard poetry reading into a high-stakes, spiritual, and musical invocation. This wasn't performance for the sake of entertainment, it was a ritual of reclamation. By aligning her cadence with the avant-garde jazz of the 60s and 70s, she ensured that her poetry carried the same rebellious, liberation-focused energy as the music. She often spoke of how the scream in a Coltrane solo was the same scream found in the struggle for civil rights, and she made it her mission to capture that frequency on the page. Even today, when she speaks, you can hear the ghost of a trumpet or the steady thrum of a bass line in her delivery, proving that for Sanchez, the word and the note are inseparable tools of revolution. Inspired by the radical clarity of Malcolm X, Sanchez focused on unwhitening her mind and championing a fierce, unapologetic Black identity. She took her art out of the ivory tower and brought poetry directly to the people, standing in the public squares of Harlem and Oakland. There, she used her words as a hand grenade, detonating comfortable silences to dismantle oppressive norms and awaken a collective consciousness. Her work became the literal jazz pulse of the word. She did not merely write for the eye, she composed for the ear, treating her voice as a precision percussion instrument. By utilizing syncopation, unconventional spelling, and sharp, staccato rhythms, she gained the power to dictate the reader's very breath. This rhythmic control allowed her to guide her audience through the heavy labor of liberation, delivering profound truths with the intensity of a drumbeat. For Sanchez, the poem was never a static object on a page, but a living, breathing event, a sonic bridge between the ancestors, the struggle, and the future. Through this mastery of sound, she proved that a voice once hesitant could become the definitive rhythm of a revolution. Sanchez embodies the profound duality of the poet, existing simultaneously as the rigorous academic and the fearless revolutionary. While she navigated the halls of higher education to create the nation's first Black studies courses, she did so under the constant, cold shadow of state suspicion. At San Francisco State University in 1966, her classroom was not just a space for learning, but a front line for liberation. She was placed under intense FBI surveillance for teaching radical literature, with agents monitoring her lectures and scrutinizing her poems as if they were blueprints for a coup. This tension defined her career. As she moved from the University of Pittsburgh to Temple University, she remained a, quote, guerrilla scholar, refusing to sanitizing her message for institutional comfort. She understood that to teach Black history and literature was a political act that challenged the very foundations of the American curriculum. Despite being followed by agents and facing professional blacklisting, she never wavered. She proved that the podium could be just as revolutionary as the protest line, transforming the university into a site of radical reclamation. By bridging these two worlds, Sanchez ensured that the intellectual fire of the Black arts movement would not just burn on the streets, but would ignite the minds of generations of students to come. Sanchez's poetry became a site of linguistic reclamation, asserting a fierce, unapologetic identity by utilizing Black English and urban slang. She rejected the quote, dictates of the Eurocentric literary establishment, choosing instead to honor the vernacular of the barbershop, the kitchen, and the street corner. By weaving the textures of everyday speech into her verse, she signaled to her community that their language was not only valid, but sacred. Her revolutionary pen sought to forge a unified political and social movement, proving that art possessed a tangible, functional value in the struggle for freedom. To Sanchez, a poem was never meant to be a passive ornament. It was a tool for mobilization and a mirror for self-reflection. She viewed her work as a bridge between the intellectual and the laborer, ensuring that the fire of the Black arts movement reached the hearts of those it was intended to serve. Through this deliberate fusion of culture and politics, she demonstrated that language, when returned to the hands of the people, could become the most potent weapon in the fight for a more just world. Academic pioneer and moral compass, Sonia Sanchez was a literal groundbreaker in American education, standing at the dangerous intersection of the ivory tower and the front lines. At San Francisco State University in 1966, she helped launch the nation's first Black Studies program, a radical act that sought to dismantle the Eurocentric monopoly on history. She did this while under constant FBI surveillance and facing immense personal risk, as federal agents viewed her curriculum as a threat to national stability. Despite being harassed by ghost readers who scrutinized her syllabi for sedition, Sanchez refused to blink. In 1969, she moved to the University of Pittsburgh to teach the first-ever collegiate course dedicated solely to Black women's literature, effectively building a canon where none had been allowed to exist. For over 2 decades at Temple University, she served as the Laura Carnell Chair in English, mentoring thousands of students. She famously taught that the world is not a place for cowards, modeling a life where the classroom was a sacred space for truth-telling. Her academic legacy is not found in dusty archives, but in the institutionalization of Black voices across the globe, proving that the pen and the podium are essential tools for a liberated mind. In 1969, at the University of Pittsburgh, Sonia Sanchez taught the first-ever college course dedicated solely to Black women's literature, a defiant act that began building a canon where none had been allowed to exist. She recognized that the voices of Black women had been systematically erased from the American narrative, and she used her classroom to resurrect the works of those who had been silenced. This was more than teaching, it was a reclamation of intellectual ancestry. She eventually brought this mission to Philadelphia, where she spent over 2 decades at Temple University as the Laura Carnell Chair in English. During her tenure, she became a foundational pillar of the institution, mentoring generations of writers who would go on to reshape modern letters. Sanchez's pedagogy was rooted in the belief that the poet has a moral obligation to the community. She insisted that art must be functional, collective, and fiercely committed to social justice. She didn't just teach students how to write, she taught them how to stand. To Sanchez, the university was not an ivory tower, but a workshop for the revolution. She pushed her students to look beyond the page and into the heartbeat of the streets, demanding that their work serve a purpose greater than personal expression. Her influence at Temple created a ripple effect, fostering a culture of art as activism that still defines the Philadelphia literary scene today. Even after her retirement, her presence remains felt in every student who picks up a pen to challenge power, proving that her life's work was never just about books, it was about the liberation of the mind. In 1977, Sanchez began her decades-long tenure at Temple University, becoming the Laura H. Carnell Professor of English. She planted deep roots in the Germantown community, spreading her poetic wisdom to various audiences as a mother, professor, and activist. This period marked a transition from the fire of the front lines to the steady glow of institutional leadership, where she spent 22 years shaping the minds of future generations. Her work explored the duality of love, described as iron and lace, combining unbreakable resilience with gentle beauty. As a single mother raising 2 sons, she balanced the grueling demands of activism with academic life, evolving her poetry to focus on community healing and the domestic sphere. This evolution was famously captured in her collection Homegirls and Hand Grenades, 1984, which won an American Book Award for its exploration of the street and the home. Living in Germantown, she became a neighborhood matriarch, often seen teaching on her porch or organizing local rallies. She proved that a revolutionary's work does not end when the protest disperses. It continues in the slow, vital labor of raising children and building local institutions. By blending the iron of her political convictions with the lace of her compassionate verse, she modeled a life where the personal and political were seamlessly intertwined, ensuring her legacy was measured not just in books published, but in the lives she nurtured. Her voice, highlighted in the poem "This Is Not a Small Voice," amplifies the stories of everyday people by celebrating the expansive power of the collective Black community. In this work, Sanchez rejects the idea that Black life is marginal, instead describing the collective voice as a large, sweeping force flowing through cities. By naming specific individuals in her poems, such as Latanya, Kadesha, and Antoine, she emphasizes that the strength of Black identity lies in its specific, human reality. This naming ritual serves to humanize a community often reduced to statistics, transforming personal names into an anthem of resilience and Black genius. Through this poetic strategy, she proves that the most profound truths are found in the hallways of our schools and the corners of our cities. Her work asserts that these are not small loves or small voices, but rather a, quote, passion for kissing learning on its face that nourishes and sustains future generations. By centering these everyday figures, Sanchez ensures that her art remains a functional tool for community healing, reminding her readers that every individual's story is a vital thread in the unbreakable fabric of the Black diaspora. A decorated legacy. Her impact on American letters has been recognized by the highest institutions in the land through a series of prestigious honors. She received the Langston Hughes Poetry Award in 1999 as a standard-bearer for Black poetic excellence, and was awarded the Robert Frost Medal in 2001 for her lifetime achievement. These accolades symbolize her successful navigation between the avant-garde world of the Black arts movement and the traditional peaks of the American literary establishment. Her shelf of honors expanded to include the National Black Authors Hall of Fame and the Harper Lee Award. In 2018, she received the Wallace Stevens Award from the Academy of American Poets for proven mastery in the art of poetry. Most recently, she was honored with the 2021 Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize, one of the most lucrative and prestigious awards in the arts, and the 2022 Edward McDowell Medal, joining an elite group of artists like Toni Morrison who have profoundly shaped American culture. These awards do not just represent personal success, they validate the functional art Sanchez championed for decades. Each honor serves as an institutional acknowledgement that her once surveilled radical verse is now considered a foundational pillar of the American narrative. Sonia Sanchez's profile is defined by resilience and storytelling, documenting life over 4 decades of narrative work that bridges the gap between the revolutionary and the deeply personal. Her cultural influence has profoundly reshaped the literary and artistic landscape, as she used every form of writing, from poetry and plays to children's books, as a distinct tool for liberation. By weaving her activism directly into her lyrical style, she confronted systemic racism and critiqued sexism within her own community, transforming the struggles of the Black diaspora into a celebrated source of pride and power. Her evolution as a writer reflects a steadfast commitment to her political convictions, moving from the brash, avant-garde verse of the 1960s to a style characterized by a nuanced, formal intimacy. This long-term documentation of the African-American experience has provided an essential educational tool through her emphasis on ancestral African ritual and tradition. Today, her legacy is measured not just by her dozen-plus books, but by the functional art philosophy she popularized, ensuring that poetry remains a living, social force that empowers marginalized identities to find their place in the world. The collection Morning Haiku reflects the mastery of Sonia Sanchez's later work through 5 luminous stars of poetic intention, reflection, empathy, resilience, rhythm, and breath. In these brief yet expansive poems, she returns to the haiku, a form she has championed as a site of profound intensity, to capture the quietude of the midnight sky and the awakening of the spirit at dawn. These verses are not mere meditations, they are sharp confrontations with systemic truths, utilizing the economy of the form to expose the vastness of global injustice, while celebrating a kinetic love for life that remains undimmed by time. This later period of her narrative work demonstrates a softening of tone, but an intensification of purpose. By focusing on the breath, Sanchez reminds her audience that the act of living is itself a revolutionary rhythm. She uses these poems to honor ancestors and contemporary heroes alike, proving that the resilience she forged in the fires of the 1960s has matured into a steady, empathetic glow. Through this collection, she continues to mentor the world in the art of the short, teaching that even in the darkest midnight, the poetic word can spark a morning of renewal and collective healing. Sanchez views her purpose as connecting with ancestors and spreading truth, grounding her work in a lineage that stretches far beyond the present moment. Her practice intentionally incorporates the Yoruba language and African-American Ebonics, serving as a ritualistic bridge between the living and the dead. By weaving these linguistic traditions together, she invokes the presence of the Orishas and the spirits of those who survived the Middle Passage, ensuring that their wisdom and endurance continue to inform the modern struggle. This spiritual alignment is a cornerstone of her functional art philosophy. Sanchez believes that the poet's role is that of a priestess or a conjurer, one who uses the word to heal the psychic wounds of the diaspora. Her usage of Yoruba terms like ase, a call to power and manifestation, is not merely decorative. It is an act of reclamation that reconnects Black Americans with an ancestral world sense. By honoring the dead through the cadence of the living, she creates a sacred rhythmic dialogue that resists the erasure of Black history. Through this ritualized storytelling, she transforms the poem into a site of communal survival, reminding her audience that they are protected and guided by a collective spirit that can never be silenced. Her poetry is seen as armor, a functional tool for personal growth, community defense, and creative liberation. She rejects the notion of the poem as a passive object, insisting instead that it must save us from what happens in the world. By teaching the mechanics of breath and the discipline of sound, Sanchez provides her readers with the rhythmic endurance needed to face systemic challenges. Her work encourages us to wear the day and inspire tomorrow, treating each morning as a site for self-improvement and a fresh start in the real world. This philosophy of art as activism serves as a protective shell, allowing marginalized communities to find inner strength and peace through self-love and healing. Her verse acts as a creative lifeline, helping individuals break the cycle of emotional pain and the aftermath of historical trauma. By reclaiming her voice through the very rhythms of breath, Sanchez proves that poetry is not a luxury, but a fundamental necessity for navigating the chaos of modern life. She transforms the act of writing into an intentional practice of making the way, where each step forward clears the path for collective progress and the ongoing transformation of the human condition. As Sonia Sanchez reminds us, the most important thing to do is listen. In a world ready to tell what it knows, she encourages a love affair with listening, a practice she traces back to hearing her grandmother speak Black English and finding the rhythm in those Southern cadences. This love of language has propelled her for 7 decades, allowing her to keep the traditions of her ancestors alive by transferring words that spin on her tongue onto the page. Her commanding body of work, spanning more than 20 books including Homegirls and Hand Grenades and Does Your House Have Lions, continues to give voice to entire communities within our shared history. Facebook +1. Her home city honored her as Philadelphia's first poet laureate from 2012 to 2014, recognizing her as a hometown hero and a national treasure. In more recent years, she has received the Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize and the Edward McDowell Medal, joining the ranks of icons like Toni Morrison for her outstanding contribution to American culture. Even at over 80 years of age, Sanchez declares that her work will continue to her last breath, moving through the world in a righteous way as a sponsor for peace and freedom. Her legacy as a founder of the Black Arts Movement and a dedicated teacher at Temple University ensures that her voice remains a major figure in the landscape of American letters. This final image of Sonia Sanchez reflects her enduring peace and powerful legacy.